losing my voice, so maybe I just should skip the homily. Would that be all right? I don't know. I know Deacon Eric was here a couple weeks ago, and he was telling everyone how I complain about I get these tough sermons, these tough gospels, and now I got to talk about faith, which is like, it's one of those mysteries of God that we struggle with all the time. But I take a lot of comfort, actually, in that first reading, Habakkuk. He was a prophet from about 700 B.C., and he's very close with God. He's a prophet. And yet he's complaining to God. Why are we suffering so greatly? Why do I have to see all this trouble in the world? Why are we going through this? I don't understand this suffering. All these things that are going on. Are you hearing me? Are you listening to me? Where are you? Have you ever felt that way? I have. It's a struggle sometimes, this faith. Where is God in all this that we go through, all our sufferings and difficulties? The disciples asked Jesus, increase our faith. How? Over my years of being a deacon, I've learned that to do that, you have to act. You have to actually go out and live it. You have to go out into this world and trusting God that somehow, if you feel called to do something, that God's going to be with you. St. Paul tells us that it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Christ lives within all of us. And we have to go out into this world in the midst of all the suffering and the chaos and the difficulties and have faith. And that's going to be challenged. It's hard. It's a struggle. There was this little girl when I was doing my ministry in Jamaica, and the principal sent me an email asking me to pray for her. Her name was Shauna Campbell. Now, some of you may have read the book I wrote about it. It was a really big moment in my life, and I had to write it down. I journaled the whole thing because I was struggling with it all the way through. But she asked me to pray for her, and I asked why. And because she was suffering from this severe throat infection in Jamaica. And she thought she was going to die because it just spread throughout her body. And the facilities in developing countries aren't so good like here in America. So she wanted her prayers. And as I did pray about this, I began to realize that God was kind of prodding me along to do something a little bit more about this. I get asked to pray for a lot of people, but this time I just felt God was like, wanted more from me this time. And as I prayed more and more, the call got stronger and stronger. I knew I had to do something. And so I started reaching out to some doctors that I knew did medical stuff in foreign countries, but none of them could help. So then I started to realize maybe I had to bring her here. And it was a whole process of trying to get a visa and find a doctor and everything. It was a very difficult path for me to go through to get her over here. I asked all the doctors I knew, and none of them could help me. So I started sending out letters to doctors. None of them knew me. I just said, you don't know me, but there's a little girl in Jamaica that needs help. And I'm just looking for someone that could help me help her. And I sent out probably about 30, 40 letters. And all of a sudden, one Saturday morning, I was vacuuming the living room. I remember the moment. The phone rang. And it was a doctor from Rochester who was at RGH. She said, I got your letter. And I saw that last line on there that you don't know what to do, but you're going to try. You want to try. He goes, I'd like to try with you. And that's all I needed, was just that one yes. So we got the files, the medical files from Jamaica, and he showed them to his friends, his ear, nose, and throat doctors. And we realized that her injuries were so severe that the facilities, U of R and RGH, the hospitals around here, couldn't even perform the surgery. It was so complicated. Another setback. So he put me in touch with another doctor, Dr. Bob Oliver, and he was an ear, nose, throat guy, and he had colleagues all over the country. He started calling on our behalf. San Diego, New Orleans, Boston. And sometimes we'd find a doctor who would say, sure, I'd be glad to help. But then the hospital would say, no, we don't want to do this. It's too dangerous. Or sometimes a facility would say, we find someone, but I couldn't find a doctor. So this went on for 9 months. And then finally, I got a doctor in Cleveland, the Cleveland Clinic. And he said yes. And the facility said yes. I was so happy. God was there. God was helping us. So I started raising money. They gave me an estimate of $35,000 after a nice discount. And I started reaching out to my friends. Can you help me help this little kid? So I started writing letters to my friends. I started calling them. I tell you, I haven't received so much rejection in my life since I tried to find a date to the senior prom in high school. It was horrible. Everyone had something going on. They were busy, couldn't do anything. It was like, wow, this brings me back. But eventually, I was able to raise the money. And I got her over to this country, and we went and did the surgery. And initially, it was supposed to be 2 surgeries. One to fix the throat, then one to just double check on it. Well, God didn't make it easy. He put me through this, and her, through this terrible grind for 3 or 4 years, where it turned out to be 6 surgeries. And it turned out to be $140,000. And the disappointment that I felt trying to help her. There were times during this that I got so angry with God. You know, we do a second surgery and everything should be fine. And she actually said 2 words. She couldn't talk before. She said, I love Jesus. And then her throat swelled up and she couldn't talk again. Then she couldn't breathe again. We had to do emergency surgery to get the trach back in her. And I was so angry. I remember how this tested my faith. Where are you, God? You asked me to do this. I could feel you calling me. You guided me here. You brought me here. We did the surgeries. I raised the money. We did all this stuff, and now you're just going to abandon us? Where are you? Are you listening to me? I need your help. I need your guidance. Show me something. Help me. Direct me. In that moment when I was at my lowest point, where I was in the darkness, I began to realize something about faith. That sometimes bad things happen for a reason. I can't understand it all the time. God's all knowledgeable. He should know these things. He's all powerful. He could fix it. He's all loving. He could certainly change things for me, for all of us who are hurting and suffering. But He doesn't. Maybe because there's something better that will come of it, of the suffering, of the hurt. And then for my experience, when I was at that low point, I began to realize that my faith wasn't about me asking for God to change my situation. It was about God telling me I need to change. I put all this pressure on me. I have to do this. I got to raise the money. I got to schedule things. And sometimes in my ego getting too big, perhaps, I forgot that God was part of this journey. That I had to trust in God. At that low point, I had nowhere to go except to God. That was all I had left. And I prayed to God, show me something, help me. I had to have patience. I had to have understanding that this wasn't going to be in my time. It was going to be in God's time. God did indeed call me to it. Because in the end, everything worked out great. We were able to raise the money. She got all the needed surgeries, and now she lives in New York City. And she's going to dental hygienist school. She's got a great boyfriend, and her life is wonderful. And for me, faith grew. My faith did increase. But God took me on this roller coaster journey that wasn't easy. That hurt. Do we want God to increase our faith also? Sometimes what we need to do is step outside our comfort zone and realize that it's beyond me. He tells his disciples, you should be able to take a mulberry tree and throw it in the ocean. That's incredible. That's impossible. But if you have faith, we can all do incredible, impossible things. brought this girl from Jamaica who I didn't even know. I got doctors to help. I got people to donate money. We had all these surgeries, and she is doing great. And my faith grew so much during all of it. All these difficulties in our world that we face. Perhaps God does allow it because there's a greater good that comes from it somewhere. I don't have the answers. Habakkuk was from 700 BC. It's been 2,700 years, and I don't think we've progressed a whole lot trying to understand faith and God. Some of the mysteries that we just trust in God. But it's important to know that God is present. God is there. That God lives in us. When we receive the Holy Eucharist, you're taking Christ in and becoming more like Christ. And building that trust and in that faith. And if you're ever having a crisis of faith like I did, look for God and see what He's trying to tell you. Maybe it's not your situation that's the problem. Maybe it's not what's going on around you, but maybe God's trying to fix something within you to bring you closer to God. Because that's faith. Oh, if I could just say one more thing. This is respect life. When I think about respecting life, I always think about Jeremiah, one of my favorite prophets. Within the first couple verses, God is telling him, I knew you before you were even in the womb. To all the people in the world that are hurting and suffering, the babies that never make it out of the womb naturally, the immigrants on the border, people suffering from war, those who are in a grocery store or a movie theater or a mall and get shot. So many struggles in this world. So easy to hate, get angry. I do. I struggle. But we have to remember that every life matters. Every person has a soul. That each person God knew before they were even in the womb. That God loves them. Even when we struggle to love them. Even when it's so much easier to hate them, to be angry. It's not what we're called to do. We're called to overcome that and love unconditionally. Because they, too, no matter who they are, they have a soul. God loves them very much, just as much as He loves you.